I'm Judy Shaw for NYSE Floor Talk. Joining me today is General Jay Raymond. He is the Chief of Space Operation for the U.S. Space Force. General, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks, Judy. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity, and it's nice to meet you, although virtually.
So, General, you are the Chief of Space Operations for U.S. Space Force. Now, most people will only think about space when they're watching a TV show or they're watching a movie. Can you tell us why space is important for everyday Americans and what the Space Force does?
I sure will, and it's a great question. It's kind of hard. It's hard to grasp it because we have a saying in the space business that satellites don't have a mother. You know, satellites are really high up in orbit. You know, some as high as 22,300 nautical miles high. It's hard to have a connection with it. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't hug it. But it provides critical fuel for our American way of life. And pretty much everything that we do is fueled by space. So for example, for those that are watching satellite television, obviously that comes off of satellites. The Global Positioning System is the system that we operate that's probably the best well-known. And when you have a smartphone, what makes that smart is its connection to space and the little dot that tells you where you are. But what people might not know is what's even more critical maybe than just the location data that comes off of a GPS satellite. The timing signal of GPS is critical to our nation. And in fact, the timing signal is what synchronizes all the electronic financial networks around our country. So the New York Stock Exchange, without the timing of a GPS signal, would really struggle.
Wow, that's so interesting. Now, tell me, the U.S. Space Force turned one yesterday, 1 year anniversary.
Yes,
tell us how it's going so far, and what are some of the highlights of the first year of building the Space Force?
Yeah, it's really cool. On 20 December of last year, the president signed the law called the National Defense Authorization Act, which is our birth certificate. And since that time, we've been running fast to build this service, and it has gone way better than any of my expectations. We've selected about 6,400 airmen to transfer into the Space Force. We've done the largest reorganization of the space enterprise in our history. We've built what we call our doctrine, which is the first ever independent theory of space power. We've submitted our first budget as an independent service. We've developed stronger partnerships with our international partners. In fact, just a couple days ago, we signed a deal with Japan to put payloads, U.S. payloads on Japanese satellites. We've done the same thing with Norway. And probably the most important thing that we've done is we've continued to operate all the capabilities that, again, fuel our American way of life and fuel our American way of war. And what's different today is that our job with the Space Force is to make sure that those satellites are protected. There is a growing threat out there that would negate our access to space. And the reason why we stood up a Space Force was to make sure that when the average American walks in the room and turns the light switch on, if you will, the lights are always on. The same thing holds true in space, that when America needs space, which is all the time, space is always there.
Okay, now General, tell me, how important are industry and commercial partnerships for the service, and what are some examples of these?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical, and we think this is one of the advantages that standing up a Space Force, or a relatively small service, has. We want to have a more fused relationship with commercial industry. Historically, what has been commercially viable is a commercial launch and big commercial communication satellites. So let me give you an example. Today, when we launch a satellite into orbit, we buy a commercial rocket to be able to launch that satellite. So you may have heard of SpaceX, for example. We buy SpaceX rockets and put our satellites on top of those rockets and get them into orbit. As technology has allowed smaller satellites to be more relevant, and as the cost of getting things into orbit goes down, we see a whole lot of commercial value in a much broader mission set than just communication satellites and launch vehicles. We think there's going to be multiple missions that will have a commercial component to it, and we're excited to strengthen those partnerships going forward.
General, now we heard you have a new name. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty cool. We stood up, as I said, a year ago, and we've been referring to ourselves as space professionals because we wanted to get it right. We did a crowdsourcing, if you will, and came up with, I think there was over 400 or so potential names that were out there. We spent a lot of time making sure that we got this right, and we're really excited about the term guardian. So there's soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and now there's guardians. It's tied to our history. When we were in the Air Force, part of Air Force Space Command, we were always known as the guardians of the high frontier. It's also tied to our mission. I'm sitting here today in our radar facility in Cape Cod, and this radar is so critical to our national security to be able to guard against any threat that our nation may face. So we just think it's really appropriate, tied to the history, and really reflects the critical mission that we do for our country.
Okay, now finally, General, what's in store as we enter year 2 and beyond?
Yeah, so this first year was all about inventing the service, and I use that term "invent" purposely because the law that established us really gave us a clean sheet of paper to build this service, purpose-built for space. And now that we've done that, this next year is all about integrating, and it gets back to your previous question. We want to integrate more fully with commercial industry. We want to integrate more fully with the other services that are out there in our warfighting partners. We want to integrate to a greater extent with our allied partners. As I mentioned, a few examples on where we've made some great strides. We want to continue that work. So it's really being able to capitalize on this service that we've invented and to reap the benefits of this service for our national security.
Well, General, congratulations on the 1-year anniversary of Space Force. And it's been wonderful to talk with you. And we're looking forward to hearing more as the years go by. Thank you.
Judy, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about something we're really proud of and that's really important to our nation. I hope you have a great holiday.
Thank you. You too, General.
Thank you.